Carnival in Brazil is celebrated as one last party before marking the beginning of Lent. It's deriving from the Roman Catholic roots brought over to Brazil in the 1700s by the Europeans. It takes place as a 4-day event ending on the day before Ash Wednesday. The most famous of the carnivals in Brazil is the Rio de Janeiro street party, in which floats parade down the street with dancers and samba schools all in flamboyant outfits. However, carnival does vary depending on which area you are in Brazil. For example, the northeastern state of Pernambuco in Brazil hosts their carnival in the mornings, as opposed to Rio, who host theirs generally more at night. Carnival was originally seen as an exclusive event for the elite in Brazil, but gradually developed and engaged with the class societies, only adding to the cultural flavour of the event, which also replicates the diverse culture and demographics within Brazil itself. The issues I'm going to be talking about regarding Carnival come under 4 headings, them being political, environmental, cultural and globalisation. Starting with political, the Oxford Dictionary defines politics as the articles associated with the governance of a country or area, especially the debate between parties having power. D. Jobber 2004 talks about politics and events and states that political and legal forces can influence marketing decisions by determining the rules by which business can be conducted. Close relationships with politicians are often cultivated by organisations both to monitor political moods and also influence them. This quote comes in handy when reading an article by Jeff Fong on a website talking about police and government corruption within Brazil. He states that official corruption will also get in the way if police continue to facilitate the drug trade or simply take it up themselves. 59 police officers were recently arrested in Rio de Janeiro for aiding the city's drug dealers. This wasn't the first time officers have been brought in on corruption charges, and it most likely won't be the last. So when analysing this particular issue of corruption within the government and police, with a country trying to re-establish itself in the way that Brazil is, corruption in this way is a huge issue in itself, but not just for Carnival. Specifically talking about Carnival, Carnival attracts 500,000 foreign visitors just to Rio de Janeiro alone, which is a staggering number. And corruption could pose a threat for these numbers in the future if the issue is set to continue and potentially worsen if nothing is done. The issue being feelings of safety from the audience members and spectators at Carnival, should they feel that the police and government being corrupt is not fully engaging with their safety. The numbers attending Carnival could dwell, and this could potentially have setbacks on the money being spent from the economy and the perception of Carnival and Brazil. Moving on to environmental issues, Jobber D 2004 states that the finite nature of the world's energy resources has stimulated the drive to conserve. This quote comes in handy reading an article online by Joe Lee and Aline Rocha when talking about a recent drought in Brazil around about 2015 affecting Carnival in the smaller communities within the country. They state that in Orlandina, a city of about 40,000 people in the soya belt nearly 400 kilometres from Sao Paulo, the governing bodies are redirecting 300,000 reals that would have been spent on Carnival celebrations to the construction of a new water storage facility. They also state that in the city of Sao Paulo, South America's largest metropolis, one of the most important water reservoirs is operating at less than 7% capacity, with the year's rainy season more than halfway through. When analysing this, the failure to anticipate and prepare for environmental circumstances have led to major decisions being made by smaller communities and areas to cancel their carnival festivals and reallocate the resources. This poses the obvious impact on tourism and how it's going to affect their areas and economy, but also another issue of having to cancel these carnival festivals for smaller communities and areas. It could be a morale issue, the deflation within the communities. It could also stem from mistrust in the local governments and governing bodies as to why these environmental issues were not foreseen. Granted, not all of them can, but possibly more checks could be done by the governing bodies and then better planning for the reallocation of funds if needed. It also raises alarm bells as to the operating of the reservoir in Sao Paulo as only 7%, which is quite alarming, but that again is a separate issue. Moving on to the cultural issues regarding Carnival, Yemen et al. 2004 speak about culture within events as being seen as a process or a product, and if so, the product of individual or group activities. For example, culture can range from high culture, such as the arts, to popular and contemporary culture, which can include such diverse activities as football, music and television. This can be argued to apply to Brazil, well, aside the football, particularly with Carnival, as it was previously an event for the elite in Brazil where the arts were celebrated and conducted, and as the evolution of Carnival integrated with the many different class societies and demographics within society in Brazil, so too did the culture. Jobber D 2004 states that culture refers to traditions, taboos, values and basic attitudes of the whole society within which an individual lives. So all demographics of the society are taken into account based on his, not just the high and the elite. All social backgrounds are taken into consideration. So the analysis of culture within Brazil, the diversity of Brazil itself can be a crucial tool for marketing itself as a new large power within global society, as well as it can be used to market Carnival, but it can also be a challenging issue as well. Carnival has roots that have been incorporated from many different cultures from around the world with regards to historical aspects within Brazil. For example, Africa, with the slaves coming over during the 1800s, they brought to Brazil art, music, dance. The Europeans coming over brought over religion, finance, education. So Brazil has stemmed from a lot of different cultures and is almost, as you could maybe imagine, a melting pot of cultures which has created the culture of Brazil in today. And as it's so diversely cultured, carnivals differ from within regions, but not everyone would maybe know this. So the issues then are, could more education about Carnival and the diversity of Carnival lead to more tourism and a better understanding of different areas within Brazil? And if the increased tourism would happen, economic benefits as well? Would this maybe be beneficial to Brazil to educate the world a bit more about the diversity of Carnival and the country itself? Marketing this may pose a challenge as well, as Carnival within modern society has become famous for the Rio de Janeiro street party, which is probably understandable with the flair and the dancing, but it is also engaging with that itself and maybe promoting less attention to the many other different types of culture and maybe the historical aspects of Carnival from Brazilian roots of culture. Excuse me. Finally, going on to globalisational issues. From our lecture slides in class, I've been given two quotes regarding globalisation. The first one being that globalisation is the process of international integration arising from an interchange of worldviews, products, ideas and other aspects. The second being that globalisation involves economic integration, the transfer of policies across borders, the transmission of knowledge, cultural stability, reproduction relations and discourses of power. It's a global process, a concept and a revolution. So when analysing globalisation with reference to Carnival, whilst Carnival is without a doubt a huge and vital tool for advertising Brazil and Carnival itself, and it does offer integration between Brazil and the world, the threat of Carnival becoming too westernised could be present. As again we've always mentioned, Rio de Janeiro with its flair and flamboyancy is without doubt the most attractive of the carnivals in Brazil, and as we also said, it does bring roughly about 500,000 foreign tourists just to Rio alone. There is the danger that Carnival can become too westernised as it's broadcast across many different countries in the world. This opens it up to advertising and sponsorship deals. It could also lead to a different kind of viewing and understanding of Carnival, and maybe not focusing so much, again as we touched on, the cultural history and the heritage of the event. But overall, personally, I would agree in saying that Carnival is a positive globalised event based on the platform that it has to promote Brazil and the Carnival itself, with the flavour of its culture being ever present if it's done in the right way. So with the recommendations for these issues, going back to the political issue of the corrupt government and police force, my recommendation would be to hiring a security force, a branded or hired security force, Whilst this could be an extra cost, a private security force with a brand or a name that is trusted within the audience and the spectators, it could encourage tourists to come to the event, possibly even more tourists, just so they know that their safety is being taken into consideration and that a corrupt government and police force is not solely responsible for the safety of the audience at the event. With regards to environmental issues, granted not all can be foreseen, but maybe if the government or the governing bodies of these areas could perform more regulated checks on the weather and environment, this could maybe have a better impact on how the residents of these areas are perceiving them if they know they're at least making an effort. And it could also, doing this so could also make them plan and foresee any environmental issues coming ahead of time, would also allow them to reallocate funding, or if they know they've got enough time, raise the funding to prevent these issues so that they won't have to make these decisions to cancel Carnival, which, as we talked about, could have impacts on the morale, the tourism and the economy of these areas. With regards to the cultural issues, in terms of educating the world more on the diversity of Brazil's carnivals through culture, I would maybe recommend that marketing appeals to travel agents to further educate specific countries and their inhabitants about the variety of carnival, not just in Rio but in all aspects of carnival all over Brazil, and how the differences could maybe attract certain people more to the Rio one. Targeting countries, as we also said, that again touching on the 500,000 that Rio brings in alone, advertise to these countries that are bringing in this number. Absolutely, it could also bring them into Rio and then further afield to experience different flavours of carnival, but also to countries who aren't contributing to this number because maybe they feel that carnival is just the Rio Street Parade when it's not the case. So advertising to countries who maybe don't know so much about it might be a way to go. Finally, with regards to the issues we touched about under the heading of globalisation, to avoid carnival becoming too westernised, the event planners could possibly choose to broadcast the event only in Brazil or countries with close ties to Brazil, for example maybe Portugal. This does, however, give you the potential to lose advertising through sponsorship from countries where carnival is not as prominent in the culture, and whilst this is a financial setback, it could work in favour for carnival and the event planners. The cultural integrity could be regained and re-strengthened, and that in itself could be used as a powerful tool to promote carnival again if it's got back in touch with its cultural and heritage roots and only strengthened the brand that is carnival. That could be a valuable marketing tool for the event in itself, which could lead to more sales as it's going back, as you'd be going to a carnival that's got back in touch with its roots possibly more. That was my suggestion for that. Thank you for watching the video and I hope it was useful for you.